Hello everyone, this is Deepa and welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is which is the best environment for the development of C++ program, whether it's a Turbo C++ or it's a Visual Studio Code for C++. Before moving forward, just have a look on C++ version history. Here is a chart of C++ version history. You can see here the first version was C++ 98 and which was released in the year 1998, and the key features were it was first ISO standard and which includes classes, templates and standard template library. After that, in a year 2003 they released version C++03 with the bug fixing or the minor improvements in the previous version. But the major changes were done in 2011 and the version is C++11, and these major updates are related to auto range based for loops, lambda expressions, smart pointers, move sentiments, null pointers and all. So these are the very major changes. After the major updates in 2011, they have done minor changes, minor improvements, or they have added multiple concepts in the C++ till the version C++23. So currently C++23 is available in the market and the upcoming version will be C++26 and it will be released in 2026. And the major changes will be done into this version is pattern matching, reflection, improvements in concurrency and tooling. So this is all about the history of C++ versions. Now let's talk about Turbo C++. Actually, Turbo C++ is released in 1990 by Borland and which is still popular in Indian schools and colleges due to the legacy curriculum. Our curriculum is very old and according to that Turbo C++ is suitable for us to use. This Turbo C++ is based on old C++ standards and the version they are using is C++ 98. It means the first version they are using. You can see here. And this Turbo C++ basically runs on DOSBox on the modern operating system. Previously it used to work on DOS operating system and nowadays it works on DOSBox on the modern operating system. Now let's discuss about Visual Studio Code. The Visual Studio Code is developed by Microsoft and this is a modern, lightweight, open source code editor and it supports extension for almost every language including C++. Means you can use Visual Studio Code for Java as well, for Python or C++ or HTML and many more things. The thing is that if you are using Visual Studio Code, we need to combine it with MinGW compiler or Clang or MSVC. So it becomes a powerful C++ IDE. For any languages, we need to add their compilers. So similarly, we need to add here MinGW. Let's compare the features of Turbo C++ versus Visual Studio Code for C++. The first one is release era. Turbo C++ is released early in 1990s and after that they had one more release in 2003. But there is no release after that. Whereas Visual Studio Code is developed in 2015 and which is modern and updated regularly. C++ standard support. Turbo C++ supports very old version of C++, that is C++ 98, whereas Visual Studio Code fully supports modern standards which is C++ 11 to C++ 23 and it will support to the upcoming version as well, that is C++ 26. Development environment. Turbo C++ runs on DOS operating system and on the modern operating system it runs on DOSBox. Whereas Visual Studio Code is a cross-platform and it runs on Windows, Mac operating system and Linux. Easy of setup. Definitely Turbo C++ is a single exe, so it is easy but it's outdated. Visual Studio Code requires setup. It means we need to install Visual Studio Code and then we need to install extension and then we need to set the compiler. So we have seen in the installation video. Code editing features. Turbo C++ provide very basic features, whereas Visual Studio Code provide IntelliSense, syntax highlighting and autocomplete. These are very important and necessary features supported by Visual Studio Code. Debugging support. Turbo C++ provide limited or none, whereas Visual Studio Code provided fully debugging tools. Breakpoints we can give, we can execute step by step as well. Compiler used. Turbo C++ use Borland C++ compiler, which is now outdated, and Visual Studio Code use modern compilers like GCC, Clang or MSVC. These all are the compilers. Project build and management. Turbo C++ doesn't support project or build management, whereas Visual Studio Code supports Make, CMake and other building systems. Real world use. Actually, Turbo C++ is not used professionally in the industry. It is used in the schools and colleges only, and not in all the colleges as well. And Visual Studio Code widely used by developers and students, and it's used for the professional development as well. Turbo C++ use very old version, that is C++ 98, and due to that there are very limited functionalities and it teaches very basic syntax. Whereas Visual Studio Code use latest version C++ 23 and it contains all the functionality which is provided by C++, and that is the reason it prepares you for real world and job ready C++ skills basically. So this is all about the comparison, and now you understood how outdated Turbo C++ is, and it's very limited with the functionality features, and whereas Visual Studio Code is very advanced and it supports for the latest versions as well. So better you go for Visual Studio Code instead of Turbo C++, and even though if you are learning C++ in your colleges on Turbo C++, you explore your knowledge with the Visual Studio Code. Now let's understand the difference between writing code in Turbo C++ and in a Visual Studio Code. Turbo C++ is an older version and Visual Studio Code is using very new version. So definitely there will be some changes in the code. If you see the first line hash include iostream.h, we use the same statement in Visual Studio Code as well, only you don't have to give the .h extension. Again, here we are using hash include con.io, which is not portable and not supported in the newer version, or not required actually, but in Turbo C++ we need this. So hash include con.io.h file you have to include if you are using Turbo C++, and this con.io .h header file includes these two functions, which is clr helps to clear the screen, and get.ch is the function which is wait for the key to press when it displays the output. If you skip this, you will not be able to see the output. So these are the 4 changes you have to keep in mind while writing your code in the Turbo C++. Now I will show you the code which is written in the Visual Studio Code. This is the code written in Visual Studio Code, and you can see the first line hash include iostream.h extension is not required here. Just you have to write down the name of header file. Then the second line, if you see, I have commented over here because hash include con.io.header file is not supported in the latest versions, so this is also not required here. And using namespace standard is a new thing we need to use because all the standard libraries are included into this std, and that is the reason we need to use this namespace over here. You can see here clr, scr and get.ch functions are not required in Visual Studio Code, as con.io.header file doesn't support in the modern compilers, and we need to use return 0 because the main function returns type of integer value. So we have to return 0 if the program executed successfully, and we need to return 1 if there is an error. and today onwards I will be using Visual Studio Code. And if you are writing your code or your exams according to the Turbo C++, then you have to note down few changes, like you have to add the here extension .h, and you have to include this file con.io.header file and clr scr function and getch function. That's it. And you have to remove this namespace and return 0. Here is a list of features which we have discussed right now are required in Turbo C++ and which are required in Visual Studio Code. So please note it down. If you have any queries, let me know. I will help you out through the comments. And if you like this video, please subscribe it, share with your friends, and keep coding.